troubles will soon be off, we'll be happy forevermore. When we meet on that shore, we'll be free from all care. Rising up in the sky, we'll be telling this world goodbye. Homeward we then shall fly, glory to share. My Jesus is coming soon, or morning or night, or noon, and many will meet thy doom. The trumpet will sound, and all of the dead shall rise, righteous meeting the sky. I'm going where no one dies, heavenward bound. We are going where no one dies, heavenward bound.
Amazing grace shall always be my song of praise, for it was grace that brought my liberty. I do not know just why he came to love me so. He looked beyond my faults and saw my needs. Amazing grace shall always be my song of praise, for it was grace that brought my liberty. I do not know just why he came to love me so. He looked beyond my faults and saw my need. I shall forever look upon Mount Calvary to view the cross where Jesus died for me. How marvelous His grace to catch my falling soul. He looked beyond my faults and saw my needs. I shall forever upon Mount Calvary to view the cross where Jesus died for me. How marvelous His grace to catch my falling soul. He looked beyond my faults and saw my needs. He looked beyond my faults and saw my needs.
Let me change this mic. Let me give it. Yeah,
Another one, sure.
choose about red.
Two shall be at the field, to be grinding at the mill, when Jesus shall call forth His own. One called away at one's once glance. Oh, how sad it would be to find one called away, but the others left behind. Left behind forever and ever, with no hope for eternity, missing out on the joys that the others will find. Dear Lord, don't let me be the one left behind, left behind forever and ever, with no hope for eternity, missing out on the joys that the others will find. Dear Lord, don't let me be the one left behind, said missing out on the joys that the others will find. Dear Lord, don't let me be the one left behind.
Mantate elungelo lodwa ukubulisa wonke umuntu lapha, and those of us that are joining us virtually on Facebook and in YouTube, both of The Real Village and Afrolog TV. Enkosini kakhulu. Molweni bethu nani. And happy Sabbath. It is good to be here. Ingathi sidiniwe, xa sihlutha ne? But the food was good, ne? Yeah. No, kudos to abantu abasiphekelele, Nkosi kakhulu. Now we are going to start with our afternoon program, but before siqalise ndizawuvula ngomthandazo. Bawereso khaya ezulwini siyakubonela Nkosi ngoba usigcinile wasikhusela, and thank you for the gift of the Sabbath. Thank you for the gift of ministry, the gift of service. Thank you for the gift of life. And dear Lord, right now we are about to have a shortened conversation with Dr. Papu and later on Mama Papu. And we just want to solicit your presence. We are in this celebratory mode, and this would not be possible without the sense that you are here, because it is your presence that ultimately makes us happy. Thank you, dear Lord, for your presence. We pray and ask all of this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Okay, so I was thinking about what questions do I ask, because we speak a lot. Nomfundisi Papu. Mhlawumbe mandimi introduce apha ecam kwam bethu sinomfundisi J.D. Papu. I used to think that D stands for David. I'm not going to tell you what it stands for. That's a chat for another time. And now we're going to have to keep this brief because class 13 abantu abaninzi are looking forward to the gala dinner. Ingathi lena ingathi siyaphaya ingathi by the way means to an end. The actual end is the gala dinner. So we'll keep this brief, but we want to have conversations that somehow edifies this moment. Now abantu abaninzi ke xa bethetha apha, they did mention their personal anecdotes with you. I'm not going to take the liberty to do that, except to say my best moments with Mfundisi Papu are really when we're having long drives, when we're having those long conversations outside from the pulpit, where you get to see the outlook, the philosophy that really informs everything that you get to hear publicly. And amaxesha amaninzi you meet people, you admire them, you like them, and then you get close to them, and then you feel like, you know what, maybe I should not have gotten close. The person that I knew from a distance is okay, but Mfundisi Papu, and I'm saying this to you, Nzaba, as a friend and as my pastor, it has been an honor to get closer. To know you, and so this conversation basically is going to be threefold: a brief one, nomfundisi, and then of course later on I'm going to be joined by Mama Papu, and then I will allow us to ask one or two questions, those questions that yes, you've always wanted to ask them. And those questions that you've always wanted to ask them, and this platform is about that as well. So we are going to do that. Before Sikali, Mfundisi, welcome to, I nearly said, I don't know, Masikali or something, but it's not. but welcome to this, or the real dialogue or whatever. But welcome to this conversation. I'm really looking forward to having it with you. And what was that? You know, conversations that matter. And for this, my first question, when you, and I said this question is a bit too long. I mean, we hear you speak. You're gonna be speaking even after this, and you'll continue speaking. And I know you wish I won't ask this question, and but if you were to be asked, in your, because ultimately and primarily you are a preacher. Yes, you've occupied different platforms and positioning of ministry, but the primary one that we know you for publicly, at least, is that of a preacher. Mhlambi, before I get there, mandiqalise ndibuze into yokubana, in your books, what does it mean to be a preacher?
What does it mean to be a preacher, or what does it mean to preach? What does
Sure.
it mean to be a preacher? Well, I think above all, I think this we were taught, preaching can be an art, something that is divorced from you, but I think from a biblical perspective, preaching is supposed to be answers that you have received from answers that you have received for your own questions about who God is and what He means to us. So, in other words, preaching cannot be divorced from your own experience.
Sure.
It shouldn't be. It can't be a lecture. You know, you can lecture about going to the moon. You've never been there. Lecture about others, but preaching is testimony. It is sharing a story about who God is in your life, how you view God in your life, what God has done for you. And it's not just about you, but you're also saying, this is what God can do for us. Because preaching is not telling people, it is sharing. It is not telling them that they are sinners, just reminding that we are all sinners. So to be a preacher is a very difficult thing, because it is supposed to be, I'll keep saying that, standing in the place of God. When I say standing in the place of God, you're speaking to God's people. So you want to say what God would say if you were to stand there. So if Christ were to stand there, what would He say to these people?
Sure.
So you want to pray and ask God to give you the message to say. Now you remember, you are not saying it to them, but you are the mouthpiece of God. So you are part of these people.
Sure.
I'm reminded of a young preacher who was 10 years old in Madagascar, when we were encouraging child preachers. So he was holding a public meeting. So he preached and he made an appeal for people to come and accept Christ. So as they were coming, he also went down and stood there and accepted Christ. He was not yet baptized. So that appeal was an appeal to him also. So he responded to that appeal, and he was standing there also to be baptized. So that's basically preaching. In other words, you are there. You are not an angel. So that's why angels are not preaching, because angels cannot be there. They are telling us what should happen. But you are there as well. If you say, let us take time to read the Bible, you can't say, because I'm reading the Bible, I'm that, because you also understand that you are not doing that. So God is speaking to you that you should do this, and I want you to tell people that they should do that. I'm just making an example. So you're not telling people what they should do. You're telling people what we should do. So it's that heavy. That is why if your wife and your children are there, it becomes even more difficult, because they keep asking themselves, is he going to do what he said, or is he doing what he says? So it's either, now that he has said this, we are going to see him doing it at home, or that's why he does this at home. So so you can't divorce preaching with it can be, this is my private life, this is preaching, but there has to be a connection.
Sure. Thanks for this. Now, and now outside inkonzo, do you I mean personally now, what do you currently think is the role or should be the role of preaching in Africa and the challenges that are facing the African society? I mean, I could mention all of those, but do you? Yes, let me just make that question very brief. What do you think would be the role of the church and preaching in particular in solving some of the problems that we have in Africa? And perhaps you could start with saying, what are some of the concerns that you have when you think about our continent?
Yeah, maybe let me just answer the way I think I hear you saying. There's a saying, I think we all know, that a text without a context is a pretext.
Sure.
In other words, if you have a text, but that text is devoid of context, you are just using that text to drive your own agenda.
Sure.
The text, which is the Bible, and the context, there should be an interplay.
Sure.
You know, that the Bible as a text can be understood and appreciated in a context.
Sure.
So one of the challenges that we face as preachers generally is that we would do Greek and Hebrew and understand the text, but not do the same work in understanding the context. And by context, I mean the social context. Where are these people? Where are they? Listen, here's the thing. Okay, let me tell a story. So we were at Bethel, and that particular morning, there used to be a village. Those of you who come from Bethel, you know that village. There was a village just opposite Bethel on the little, not a mountain, but in Israel they will call that a mountain, but it's not just a little hill there. And one morning there was a demolition. Those houses were demolished. My view is that morning we should have canceled preaching and go and assist, because some of those people work here at Bethel. But we went on with our Sabbath school and read the mission story. But there were people there who work here. We know them, and they're busy taking their iron sheets and whatever, trying to salvage whatever they can. But to us, it's Sabbath. We're listening to a sermon. That's fine. We understand. And then there's a sermon preached, because the person who preached it prepared that sermon yesterday. But in that sermon, there's no mention of what is happening across the street. How are we supposed to respond to that? Or it doesn't matter, I've got this sermon, let's prepare for heaven. Let's do this. What I'm trying to say is I felt that we've missed the boat. And you keep asking yourself a question. Would Christ be here, would he be there? I don't know. Now, here's the thing. Did Christ spend time the whole Sabbath and afternoon preaching to the Jews? Or he would come in and read and also extend his presence to those who are outside of his presence? So this is where you can call it politics. This is where we struggle, because our training hasn't helped us to diagnose and understand the context. We have no theories and apparatus to understand the context, so that we just ignore it. That is why in our country we would have apartheid, we would have all this kind, but we won't say anything. Because you can't talk about that. And we come from that background. So you've got people who are divorced from them. So we even feel bad to mention that there are poor people. No, don't talk about poor people. Let's talk about spiritual poverty. Let's talk about spiritual poverty. Don't talk about poor in the sense of materially poor. But then you go look at the Bible. But if you look at the Bible and study Micah, study Malachi, Habakkuk, they were addressing issues that were there and saying, but what does God expect of you? What does God expect when there are people who are hungry? He would even say, I don't even regard your worship as genuine worship, because this is what you have done to the poor. This is what you have done to the widows. And I think that's a great challenge for us. Of course, for us as Adventists, I must be honest, and this is self-critique, we may be big on reading the Bible without the context, but you can have a situation where there are others who read the context and they have no regard for the Bible. So it's just a social context. Let's just run with this thing. Let's get so much as if you can bring in New Jerusalem through social action. Are you with me? If we can get water and the poor are taken care of, then there's heaven. So there's also that challenge. So we have to bring the two together, where the Bible is allowed also to critique even those who are busy with social projects and as to how they should even do that. So I think that interplay between text and context continues to be a challenge for us, and I don't think one can say I've managed, I've mastered it.
Okay. All right. Now that you've spoken about that, I'm in a tight spot here, because number one, the title of this conversation, this program in the afternoon, says life behind the service. And I also know next to me is my friend who doesn't like to talk about himself. And so I've got that interplay. But I'm going to have to ask you now that we've started, with preaching, how does your normal week, of course you preach almost every week, but just in a nutshell, how does your personal work sheet looks like towards building what you're going to be preaching about that particular Sabbath?
Yeah, that's the problem, because we've realized that once you're in the administration, you tend to preach administrative sermons. So you're thinking of what sermon can I preach to encourage people to be able to do this and that. So it's not like as it would be a pastoral, because you're not in touch as you should with the members, with the church members and people who worship. So you just have the burdens of the conference. The CFO sends you the tithe bulletin, and then you say, hey, people must be faithful, because there are these things that need to be done. So you think about that. So which is a big challenge, and we have seen it, that sometimes in the administration you lose your preachers.
Sure.
And they say, but he used to preach, but ever since he became an administrator, because as you stand there, you think of all the burdens and the challenges of the conference. But I think and I think those who are leaders, they can agree to that. One of the greatest challenges for us in the leadership is to have time for yourself and God, rather than having time for the organization. We always think of the first thing you are thinking is the organization, is the church, but what about yourself? What about yourself? I mean, when are you going to read the Bible for yourself? Not for preaching, for yourself. And I think one preacher said, preaching should be preaching out of the overflow. In other words, this is how God has blessed me, that I have to share this. But then you discover there's nothing to share. You yourself are dry. There's nothing to share. The question should be, when last did God speak to you, Pastor? Speak to you, where you feel like God is speaking to me. And sometimes you shed tears. You feel like this is really talking to me. But because we've got this agenda, we've got these items that must be taken care of, God struggles to speak to us. And you miss those moments where it's just you and God. And because God does not respect you. I mean, you know what I mean by that. God is not going to say, no, but I can't say that this is Pastor Papu. He's the president. So I can't say that to him. But God doesn't have all those things. He's going to tell you exactly that. Whenever you are proud, if you are not careful, he's going to tell you right there through his word and through your conscience and the Holy Spirit speaking to your heart. I think those are the moments that matter the most. I think that the greatest sermons that we preach, I'm not going to say that I preach, the greatest sermons that we preach are those sermons that have blessed you as an individual. And it says, I can't wait to share this. First with your wife, also with your, in a close proximity, and then sharing with the larger. So it's how you have been blessed by, and you can tell, and people can tell whether this is just academic, lecture, or when this is an experience. This is how I've been blessed, and I think that's what we strive for. That I will share that which I know I'm repeating myself. I'll share that which I've also eaten.
Sure.
Singers can sing well, beautifully, and only to discover they don't even listen to those songs. When you look at the collection, it's a different collection of songs. But when they stand here, they give us what we want, but they don't eat it. But we can easily do that also as preachers.
Sure. Now for this, you have a reputation. Of course, I'm deciding to zoom this conversation. We can't visit every aspect of your life, into your life as a preacher, and you have a reputation for abantu badla ukuthi umfundisi uPapu ithethe njalo, and that is true. But what people don't also realize, or maybe they do, is that you are a shy person, and somebody say you like and somebody who is not necessarily confrontational, and who, if it is possible, right, but you would say those difficult things, and as somebody that knows you, it just compels as the listener to just say, you know what, there's no way that it could be him that is saying that, it must be Papu. I mean, it must be God. Is there a struggle when you have, or are there things that because of your personality or maybe even your character you struggle to say as a preacher, and if they are, how do you work around those?
Yeah, maybe in responding to this, I'm just going to quote Ellen G. White. When we read testimonies and read other books, selected messages, where Ellen G. White has written strong words, we say those things, we think we are saying them the way she said them.
Sure.
When you read what Christ says, you generation of vipers, and you say that, you think you are saying it the way he said it. But when I read from Desire of Ages that Christ would have tears in his eyes as he says that.
Sure.
But when we say that, and when Christ says that, there's a difference.
Sure.
Tina was saying it as if, I got you now. But Christ said it pained as he sees the reality you are in and the challenges you are facing. Even in the Old Testament, when you see those prophecies, those rebuke, it is coming from a father, from God who is consumed with grief and pain because of what is going to happen. If you've seen a mother who shouts at the child who's crossing the street, she's crying. But you listen to the voice, you would think that, how can you rebuke the child like that? But you can't. When we are there, look at the context, you can actually see the face. There's concern, there's a feeling that this child is going to die.
Sure.
I think this is where we need to be honest. Let's confess. I know some of us, I'll confess on your behalf. Sometimes this is this makes you angry.
Sure.
Like as a person, it makes you angry. Not because God is not in the picture.
Sure.
So it's about you. Go and look at the story of Moses and Aaron when they were hijacked, ambushed by the crowd, and the crowd says, "Give us water. You guys are cruel." This is not just before they entered Canaan, and then Moses lost it. Moses lost it, and he said, "Do you want us to give you water?" And God was not in the picture. And he says, in a way, by implication, "We will give you water." And the people were listening, which means all along, you've been the ones giving us water. So when we don't have water, you have decided not to give us water. And so they went they hit the rock twice. They shouldn't have hit it, by the way, because God says, "Speak."
Sure.
But because they were carrying their own agenda, they couldn't even hear God speak to them as leaders. God says, "Speak to the rock." But because it was their agenda now, it was no longer God's agenda.
Sure.
They'd taken it away from God. So they hit the rock twice. Now God says, you have not sanctified me in the eyes of Israel.
Sure.
You have not sanctified me. In other words, you have done the opposite. You have made my name to stink in the eyes of, and for that reason, you will not go to Canaan. That was a huge thing with God. Even when Moses pled, he says, "No, you are not going in." But you know the story better than I do. And the problem was, and he says, "Moses, this is about God. This is the point where you should have reminded them that this is about, even if you were to be angry, it is called holy indignation. It is about God, not about me. It is about God." And then you'd be jealous of, Moses had shown that before. But this time it was about him. And I think when preaching is about you and how you are disappointed, you call yourself a Christian. You call yourself a Christian. Look, some of you have been here baptized for 40 years, but you still do these things. You see a person doing these things, eating between meals, And remember, it is easy for us to talk about those things that we have, number one, mastered.
Sure.
And sometimes not by the grace of
Sure.
Jesus.
Willpower.
Yeah, just your sheer willpower. So that you say to a person, "What's wrong with you?" Just don't do it, because that's what you did.
Sure.
So there's no grace in this thing. Others were born not liking certain things, but it coincided also with
Sure.
a health message. But it's just in them.
Sure.
So there is no understanding or appreciation that this could be a challenge to this this person. So you call that a sermon when you are actually trying to say to people, "Do what I'm doing." Sure. This can be done because I am doing as well. So it's a challenge. Preaching is a difficult show. I think after you have preached, you realize that I need to ask God to forgive me, because I think I kept running ahead of him.
Sure.
I kept putting myself in the path.
Sure.
And God forgives us. Really, honestly, God forgives us. Because even as he asks us to preach, he's trying to work with us. Because after listening to that sermon, and those of you will agree, you feel like, sure, I can't even look at the people I preached to, because I think I did not represent God. But God allows that so that we can be able also to understand the message He wants us to practice.
Sure.
I think in the short and long of it, God has asked us to preach to others so that He can reach us. Because God knows that if He's going to go to heaven and ask Him to preach, and He wants to go to heaven, and God says, you must go to heaven, He's not going to go there alone if He's going there.
Sure.
So it's about me going to heaven, but there's no one who goes to heaven alone. Because once you are going to heaven, really, there's a desire in you to have as many, because the person who you want to see in heaven wants to see many, not just alone, not you alone.
Sure. Look, like I said, Pastor Papu, I could have chosen to concentrate on you as a father, and we would have that conversation. And I remember in one of the conversations I asked you, hey, by the way, you saw the video that was circulating of Bulumko reflecting on you as a father. And I'm not going to share what the answer was. We were talking about that. So we could have spoken about that. Could have spoken to you, you as a leader, by the way. But like I said, I just decided to zoom into you as a preacher. I celebrated preacher, by the way. And do you ever have bad days as a preacher?
Very many. There are more bad days than good days.
Sure. And how do you regroup from that?
I think it's my wife probably would say, I think that was no, but on a serious note, there is no preacher who preaches and gets excited and say, yeah, I did it.
Sure.
We were taught by Pastor O.T., if you would remember, that your best sermon is in the future.
Sure.
But before you preach it, it's your best sermon.
Sure.
Because it has to be.
Sure.
But once you preach it, you feel like, you know what, if I could be given another opportunity, Lord, I'll do better than what I've done.
Sure.
So your best sermon is in the future.
Sure.
I remember a friend of mine says, Pastor, sure, I preached that sermon. That's a sermon that I have. When I preach that sermon, people cry. And I was just saying, well, it looks like he's got a sermon in the past. So I wish you could develop one for the future, because he'll always be measured by what he has already accomplished or what he has already done. No, it's difficult to I think people who sing can say that, because you sang the right note, the way you practice it. But with preaching is different.
Sure.
There's always more you could have said you did not say. There's always more in the way you said it that you wouldn't have said it that way.
Sure.
You said more than what you want to say. You said less. It's a whole lot of it.
Sure.
So by the time you sit down, you feel like, sure, what was I doing? So there is no excitement. And I know I'm talking on behalf of many here. There is no excitement. You are trembling before you do it. You tremble while you do it. You tremble after you've done it. So you wish you could finish preaching and disappear and let no one see you, because you don't feel like you've done your best.
Sure. Last two questions.
But I am an introvert. It's true.
Yeah. No. Okay.
Yeah.
Sure. Now, two things, and then I sit down around preaching still. Number one, let me start with this one. Should I start with it? Yes. Let me start around the issue of as a preacher. What I said this at the beginning. As a preacher, yes, this is the question I wanted to say before I say this one. It is true, and it has been said, and it is true that Adventism is a great message, and does not need great messengers. But the truth is that the message does need messengers. And what kind of preacher do you think the Adventist message needs for it to make the impact it is meant to make? What kind of preaching?
I think one of the things we lack in is an appreciation of the message we have. I think you made a good observation between the message and the messenger. Adventists don't have great messengers.
Sure.
You have a great message that we have to preach. But I think, to be honest, we've yet to appreciate the message that God has given us.
Sure.
That to me is the greatest cry for me and for many of others who feel that this is not it. I think the more we appreciate that, you will find that it has answers for this world. You know, Adventism came right 1844 going forward.
Sure.
It has answers for this.
Sure.
And not only for Adventists. I have friends in churches that are not Adventist. We talk and we share, and you realize that there are perspectives that we need to share with the world that can be helpful to the world. But the problem is that we are either shy or we don't understand. And that shyness maybe is born by the fact that we do not understand. If what you are eating is so wonderful and you are sure of what the other person will experience the same, there's that holy boldness that you have. And I think if I were to put it in a nutshell, may God help us to understand and appreciate the message that we have. For an example, the whole message of the 1844 and the investigative judgment is a problem to many because we do not fully understand it. That's why we fight about it.
Sure.
But when you talk about that to somebody who may not even be an Adventist, he may actually say, you know what, this is beautiful. To have a situation where the Bible says God will judge the world, to me that's beautiful. And there's one of the messages that gives me comfort is that we worship a God because once you use the word judge, it's going to be transparent. It has to be. It has to be transparent. I'm sure people who are
judge as well now. There he is.
It has to be transparent. You can't just say, because I say so. You can't say, because I say so. So when the Bible says God is going to judge, it can't be because God says so.
Sure.
It has to be to a point where even those who are judged, even those who are watching, those who are being judged, will feel that this is what we mean by. I think the ultimate meaning and understanding of justice is within the divine context. And so what the world does is to try and approximate that, where you want people to know why this judgment was taken. It's not because I like you, I don't like you. There's evidence. And the Bible keeps talking about that. And what I see Adventist message doing then is to help us appreciate that. And because what happens is, first of all, I've listened to people arguing about God's existence. And then I say, I wish you knew. And then the one you're arguing with, he says, but God is cruel. Look at what he has done. He killed people, he does this, and he takes them to heaven. And he does this and he does that. And this is where I say Adventism comes in to say, no, the God I'm talking about who exists doesn't do that. But now you have to struggle to have a God who loves, but a God who organizes a rapist to rape your child
And take them to heaven.
so they can take that child to heaven. And then you say God is going to judge. Then he must first judge himself. Because that is not nice. That is not good. It doesn't look just. So I'm saying maybe what we need to do is to fully understand this. And most of some of the questions we have, even about God, we may not always answer all of them, but we can be sure that there are answers based on what we have already said. So I know I'm saying many things now because I'm trying to think about what I'm trying to say, but the point is, we need to take time and understand the message. And there will be passion as you see who God is, how God is represented in the message.
Sure. All right. And lastly for this, Mama Papu is on her way. And then the Mam Chawe come and occupy these two hot seats. please. But the last question, and I'm asking you this not just to reflect on yourself, but also on your generation of preachers and those that came after you. And I'm asking this so that today's and tomorrow's preachers can, yes, we do learn from your successes, the things that work, but I do want you to also link this question with when I ask you, have you had bad days before? What are the things that do not work in preaching? Because it's very easy to tell people things that work, and rightly so. But in your observation, what are some of the things that have been the downfall of effective preaching?
Okay, maybe many, but let me mention one. One of the downfalls in preaching are people who are gifted. Being gifted can be a challenge when you preach because you tend to rely on your giftedness. You can tell this man is gifted, and if you listen, say because he is gifted.
Sure.
And I'm not saying people should not be gifted. Sure. In other words, even if he was not a preacher, he would still be a good speaker.
Sure.
Even if he did not pray, you still be a good speaker.
Sure.
So because you're a good speaker, I mean, praying now is not as important as it should be.
Sure.
Because on your own, without prayer, you can still speak well.
Sure.
I think that's a challenge. And I was listening to somebody who says, when the gift does not work, what did he say? But when you have a gift, but you're not putting in much work on it, and then work alone will do what the gift cannot do. And if you look in the Bible, God does not pick people who are
great
orators. He doesn't. Because the challenge is going to be, at what point do I approach God? At what point do I ask God to help me? Because I can do this. I can say this. You know the story of I think this is a well-known story of these two, the old man and the young man who had skills in oratory, and they were reciting Psalms 23. And the young man did his thing, intonation, this and that, and there was standing ovation. Wow, this is beautiful. Did you hear that? And then the old man comes and he does the same psalm, but towards the end, no one is standing up. There is no applaud, but people are crying. You can feel they are touched. Same psalm. And then the question is asked, what's the difference? And the old man says, the young man knows the psalm of the shepherd, but I know the shepherd.
Yes, sir.
Of this psalm. And that's the difference. I think sometimes we let our gifts run ahead of us. And it works for a while. We've got ministries that are sustained by gifts and not by grace. So that prayer to you is a waste of time. Even as you make it, you are just saying, Lord, you must be there to come and hear me. You invite God to come and hear what you're going to say. You can say, did you hear what I said there? God, it's like God was also surprised because you came up with something he did not expect himself. I know this might like this, but you feel like God must say, I didn't expect that one. Did you think about this one, God? You didn't even think about this one. The one that I just said. But beloved, you can never, and this is what we have discovered in the book of Acts, you can never go anywhere that God has not been. When you get there, the first thing you do is to look for God's footprints. And whatever you say, you are just echoing what God has already said. So I came to understand that probably very late in my ministry, that preaching is echoing God's voice, all right, which is already speaking in the heart of the person seated. So that when you speak, the person hears the echo. In other words, he says, this thing is coming up again. So it's no longer you speaking. It is the echo of the voice that God is communicating to you. On the pulpit becomes God's voice. You are echoing God's God's voice. I think if I've learned, I'm sorry, I'm going to put him on the spotlight. I think what we have learned as young preachers, because our first homiletics class was under Pastor Mngabisa. So if we are not doing well, he's to blame for that, because and if we are doing well, we must be appreciated. But I think what we learned as young as we were at that point, that preaching is a serious business. Very, very serious. You could be speaking there for the last time to a dying soul, and those will be the last words he has heard. It's okay to say, sorry, I don't have a message. Yes, there is a Bible and there are verses, but I don't have a message. Ask somebody to preach. You don't have to go around looking for just Indiza and then just put fire. It's okay to say, I don't have a message. Thank you. Sorry, I don't have a message. Let somebody else. And sometimes you really, I remember I was I'm sorry, now
okay.
I'm getting, that's what happens with people who are introverts. Once they get on the mood, you can't stop them. Do you know this thing of going to a church, just visiting? You know there's somebody who's preaching, and you get in there and say, Pastor, can you come and preach? I'm not saying people shouldn't do that, but they should also honor you when he says no.
Sure.
Don't put the God's child, man of God. This particular morning, the person comes and says, Pastor, I said, no. Now, who's going to preach? So let him preach. And the person went up and he preached. I felt bad. I felt bad. I said, even if I had no message, maybe I would have done better than that. So I felt like God is saying to me, listen, you've disappointed me. So I had closing my eyes. I said, maybe I should have gone. Maybe I should have. Why didn't I do it? The guy was in the white horse and the yellow and the pale horse I said, leave the horses. But you know what? I learned a lesson. He finished preaching. He made an appeal. People came crying. And I said, thank God I did not preach, because I don't know there was going to be anyone coming crying. This is God's work, beloved. This is God's work. You don't sit there and determine which sermon is good, which one is not good. God knows what sermon and to who. And I sat there and I said, you know what? I need to ask God to forgive me. Because right there, I thought I could have done better. But who does this thing? Is it not the Holy Spirit? So what am I trying to say? Am I saying that the Holy Spirit would have used me better than that person? How can I tell the Holy Spirit that? It is because we get to a point where we think this is our project. And I think this is where we make a mistake. And you can still go there and do something. People will be excited. But sometimes you wonder if Christ is excited. I've said to young preachers, when you preach, identify a spot in your congregation and say, this is where Christ is sitting. All right, this is where Christ is sitting. He's sitting there. You've got to practice his presence. This is where he's sitting. So you preach, people may say hi and be excited, hallelujah, amen. But look at Christ, is he saying amen? It's easy to please them, but can you please him? And sometimes when you look at him, you see him looking at you and say, when are you going to do what I asked you to do? Because right now you're busy about yourself. So that even in the process of preaching, you can experience conversion. And those who are observant can say, he changed somewhere. Because somewhere, God got hold of you. And then he was able to use you for his own benefit. Preaching is a serious business. This is not politics. This is not you having an axe to grind. This is God speaking to his people. And I'm going to end on that story of Moses and Aaron because I've been reading on that story. So how can we make sure we don't make that mistake? If Moses, after 40 years talking face to face with God, can blunder like that, who am I? You can get so used to God's things until you don't need God. I can do this on my own. I've got this, God. You can go and help others. I've got this. Yeah, I'm good. And that's how Moses blundered. And Aaron.
Okay.
Is that they felt that they've got this. And God looked at them and says, now you have really, really disappointed. And so we have to keep that and keep at it, beloved. And we're going to miss it at times. Let's accept it. We're going to miss it at times. But remember, this is us learning to talk the language of God. So we're going to make mistakes. But we make those mistakes with the desire to please God. And so your best sermon, again, is in the future. Thank you.
All right. For this, I hope you guys enjoyed that. You were blessed by that. Go. Oh, okay, yes. Very much like a mic. All right.
This is my wife. Why are you
Introducing my wife.
All right. Now I'm Papu Paya. Unomti Unomtandas Papu. Mama Patricia Papu. Okay.
Now, by the way, we may have forgotten to say that my mother is here.
Yes.
She's turning 84 in next week. My mother's sister, which is my other mother. I've got two mothers. There she is, seated next to my next to my mom. So when you say all nasty things to me, you must remember I've got a mother. You know, some people think that leaders just drop from the sky. I've got a mother who really gets hurt when you say those things. That's my mom. My umakazi usetimbaza umama useKape. Kubantwana bakokwabo bonke, they are the only two that are left. We love them so much. We just want to spoil them. They are such a blessing. We love them very, very much. And then, of course, I've got my sister and who's here, and I've got my wife. And my wife has her sisters here who are here today.
Amen.
The two sisters. I've got my brothers. My wife is reminding me, mention your brothers as well. I've got my... Forget about brothers. I've got my brothers here, the last born at home, the one that comes after me, and my one sister is not here. My two... Can we ask you to stand? I know maybe I shouldn't be doing this. Can you ask my two sisters first? My two sisters to stand. My two sister-in-law. This in-law thing. So that's the firstborn. That's the secondborn. That's the thirdborn. Thank you. Then I've got the elder sister at home. That's my sister. You know, when they introduce the pastor, they forget about the family that encourages you when you have not been re-elected. So that's the... When I was working at SID, I'm just the beauty. When I was at SID, and so my mother says, I hear that now. You're no longer going to be in Johannesburg. I said, yes, I'm not going to. He said, I'm so happy. I am so happy. I said, now where are you going to be? I said, it looks like I might be in Port Elizabeth. You are going to be very close. You are very far. So that's the family that keeps us going. Because they don't care about all those positions. They just know that this is my son. And she's close to me now. And that's my sister, Uzo. All right, that's my sister. And that's my brother. Some of you know him for good or bad reasons. But that's my brother there, Osemva, the troubler of Israel at times. And that's the youngest brother. He's very quiet. He just wants to sing his songs. You're not going to find him in any of these other things. That's my youngest brother. Of course, I've got my two sons here, the beloved sons, and
nephews and nieces.
and nephews and nieces and fiancés. Oh, right. It's the house full. That whole side there, that's family and friends and you also.
Amen. All right, guys. I felt in the manner, and I mean, we have tried. I hope you noticed our program. In the manner, that was deliberate. I also felt that there might be questions that I'm a bit disqualified to ask, and so masibane Mike singabathetheli. Ndicela ke ngoku sisivi ufote bebambe imic singazibambanga thina because ngavele bembi la picture thina sibambe imic bamamele bona uthi yabona amadoda amaXhosa thetha wena odwa so babambe imic bafote yes lega please mic simamele thina sithetha
Ndifuna manje Mike pha kumfundisi.
okay
Aqi. Naye ndinawo umbuzo. Molweni bethuna. Fundisi nome. Enkosi. I think let me start there. Yes. I'll be quick. Okay. Uyibambe le mic sisiviwe uthathe umunqe. Ewuchitha amathandabuzo. Thank you. What a privilege. I think what an honor. I was sitting this morning reflecting on the first time I got to know you because now I came into your lives through my then fiance. I remember we met somewhere. I think you were here visiting, and then Usiso had come to see you. So then I because I'd always known Usiso from Motherwell because I was from the Motherwell district. And so, Usiso, Sister Kamfundis, and the two of you, I was like, these two have a beautiful relationship. I didn't meet you men then. And I remember you grilling me with questions. So I need to get to know you now. But soon after that, I got a call, I think, from you men. And this is leading me to perhaps my first question. What I think you said, and one of the things that you said to me, I want to recommend a couple of books to you, you said. And the first book that you said I must read, it's a practice that you gave me that I still hold dear today. And that was The Power of a Praying Wife. Before I come to you and talk to you about the impact of prayer in your life personally, I want to ask Umfundis. They say behind every successful man. Now, I know you are not where you want to be, because all of us continue to grow. But I'm sure you can take a moment and pause and look at where you started and where you are now and say, that God has achieved through my life and my ministry. The value of having a man behind you, the impact of her presence, not even as Mama Mfundis, she happens to be, but the impact of her presence in your life and in your ministry and in your work and in your pursuit of excellence. What impact has that played? I hope you have a kalumbu as well. Before ma'am, I thought let me just start that with you.
I think next to your conscience is your wife. Generally, she can be just honest. And sometimes the silence speaks volumes. So she did not even say anything about the sermon. Don't ask.
You've got the message.
You've got the message. It's easier to preach when your wife is not there. Especially when preaching is playing to the gallery. One of the nice things about preaching, it makes you to make sure that you are okay with your wife. Otherwise, where she's sitting, you will not look at that side. So, misunderstanding must be very temporal if you are a preacher. Because you know it is not real. If there's still something that makes me find it difficult to look at my wife when I'm preaching. I want my wife to be praying for me. So he says, I'm going to be praying for you. But how is she going to be praying for me if on the way to church, we were just standing about to get into Langa Church on a I don't know whether I was going to preach, I can't remember, but yeah, so we were about to get into the gate. About to get into the gate. You see, the devil can really, the devil waits for that moment when I want to preach. He promises all kinds of things. But we're about to get into the gate, and my wife says to me,
I remember this story.
what did you say again? She said, why don't you just park the car there? I'm busy trying to think, should I get in or should I park the car outside? So while I'm in that process, thinking, she says, why don't you just park the car outside? She's saying, can't you think? Then there was something that went up here and blocked my voice. I didn't know. I looked at her and said, please, man, please, just let the person think. He says, that's the easy way, just park the car there. I mean, why are we standing here when we just park the car there? But how do you go and preach? How do you go and preach after that? You've got between that point and the pulpit, you've got to reconcile. Otherwise, you might just change the sermon and say, I'm going to talk about Ephesians 5, verse 22. Wives, respect your husbands. And then you look in that direction.
Thank you for this. I thought I would share that question. Memu, as we say at children's ministries, women's ministries, mem, but legging it memu, and gefune kusabe, a memu. I want to ask you this question. And this is linked to your prayer bone. And what is it like to wife this man? And I'll say that with respect. For you, what has it meant for you? What duties did ukuba nkosikazi kam not umfundisi, like ukuba nkosikazi kam mfundisi uPapu? What duties has it given you that we don't even know about? I hope you are overlooked. In other words, there are things, because us helper simamele umfundisi and impacting us. But then who has not been impacted by umfundisi Papu ministry. We know that yes, it is him, it is his walk with God, but there is a praying woman behind him. But I want to know, what does it mean to you? Not in terms of the pride, which is your woman first lady. The challenge is the depth of being Mrs. Papu.
Nkosi kakhulu, molweni, greetings everybody. I think the first one, the foundation of my answer would be, what has made it easy for me, first of all, is that uyamoya kuThixo, which has made it easy for me. Secondly, he does not just love me, but he is committed ekunthandeni, and he is consistent.
Amen.
He's just consistent about it. Let me just cite probably practical examples. He's just mentioned, of course, making a joke that wives submit to your husbands. It's easy for wives to submit to their husbands when the husband first loves their wives, their spouse. I'm grateful to God because it has made it easy for me to respect the husband he is. Because Joabes in Chilo, he has made a vow to this commitment, okokuqala, to honor God first. Because that is it's easy ukutshatela kwindoda elikholwa ngesizulu. It really helps in many ways because we are human beings. We are sinful human beings with our mistakes, with our flaws, you know. But kulula when the person fears God. I wish I can emphasize this over and over because njengoba ndisitsho, he has been consistent about it. So that the way he is committed to me as unomthandazo, it also spills over ebantwaneni uThixo asisikelele ngabo. So it has been easy and it continues to be easy because utata wekhaya ongumfundisi uhlonela uThixo kuqala. Yenza loo nto ke into yoba the vows ngalaa mini sitshatiswa ngumfundisi ubandla. Namhlanje he's still consistent about it. There are so many ways of showing love, you know. uThixo expects husbands to love us. Ngohlobo yena athanda ibandla lakhe ngalo. Jesus Christ died for his church. I strongly believe that that's what my husband is doing to me. How does he die daily? He dies daily by waking up at 4. Not necessarily at 4, probably uvuke phaa ngo-3 okanye 3:30 uyathandaza, but this particular time, it's Wednesday. We have an outreach that I said, hey, ndifuna uqalisa le nto. His dying daily is to leave what he's doing. Ame apha ekitchen. Andincedise ukwenza ezi sandwiches ezi. Sawugqiba uzenza sizipakishe kakuhle athi awuzohamba wedwa. Sizawuhamba songena esixekweni and assist abantu abahlukileyo. He dies daily by saying, unomthandazo, by the way, is a musician, uyacula uthanda ukucula. Just recently, last week, umele bandisekapha because in our ministry, traveling from one place to another, I joined many groups from New Creation Singers, Oma Airborne, or Ingoma. I received an invitation. Ma'am, we have this thing next week. And he's like, okay, just like that. He doesn't even ask. You are supposed to be in Cape Town. Here's the ticket. 3,000 something. Are you going to Cape Town or not? So Zamguti, it's easy like that. He dies daily by saying, okay, here's a ticket. Go to Washington and visit Uviwe alone. Here's the card. Shop until you drop.
Yeah.
So that is why I say he's committed.
The card is no money.
Yeah.
Vile Motata, ticket to Washington. Neck card. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. And as people are women made, I asked that question because we've experienced it. My next question is to you, but feel free to chip in here. The question is, I'm going to ask it and then I'm going to sort of elaborate, but giving you time to think it. What drives you? What drives you? What drives you guys? What drives you, men? And I speak about you now, but what drives you as a family? Because I mean, we are human, but as we have watched you, you keep, I missed the word, but you keep getting better. Evergreen, yeah, that's the word. Psalms chapter 1. Psalms chapter 1, where he shall be like a tree planted by the river, bringing forth fruit in due season. And for a number of years, that greenness we've always seen, kubomba confundis, that every time you stand up there to speak, siphuma sitshintshile. But in addition, Umfundisi Mngqibisa told the story of how Umfundisi Force and others would come into your house. The same happens to us. I'm sure many would say here the same, opanda, no ban, that yeke ipulpit ke so uphume ezindlini zethu. Uphuma sinethi chin, Umfundisi Bella, we wish to be better. Kanga ufike usilungise just by your presence wherever we are or whatever it is that we're doing. And then with time, ma'am, we got to watch you. Closely at the conference, I often say to people, ACSV, Romans 8 verse 28, zonke izinto zisebenzela okulungileyo. God knew that in 2020 we were going to be hit by COVID. And this was the time that you were to lead us. These past 3 years, God knew now. Because, ma'am, the virtual church, we never thought that it would be something that would run so smoothly. Mem usbambile singoma. You leave us better. You leave us, and I'm not just talking about mama as women's ministries. Singoma mumfundisi. Because omama bayibambile women's ministries. If umama mfundisi othule yakwazi ungabikho involved. But Mem Papu came with the experience of Shepherdess International, placed us in our position, and we took it. And I'm hoping, and I want to promise you, that even as you leave, we've got it. So I sit here on behalf of all the women of the Cape Conference. Ma'am, the two departments, women's ministries, the children's ministries, zinzulu, zinzima, zibhizi. And for years, it's been understandable that umuntu oyinikweyo abaleke nenye ayihuqa. Yintombi wabaleka nazo zombili. I say that because I'm a mother who have children who have been benefiting from an ongoing children's ministries. Abantu abayaziyo i-virtual church zange ingabikho iprogram yabantwana fresh from you, man. And so I honestly, because we are here looking up to you guys. What drives you?
How to answer this one? But somebody mentioned one of my favorite verses, 80, whatever your hands find it to do it with all your might. You know, I strongly believe in that verse. And no woman is an island. I come from a very, very strong family, ubaba, no mama, and my siblings, a powerhouse yomthandazo. I believe that I am where I am because of what my parents taught me. And I'm grateful for the name that they gave me, because my burden has been, Nkosi yam undithiye igama lokuba ndingunomthandazo. Therefore, I really need to live on my knees, because I can promise you, when I receive a proposal from Umfundisi saying, I want to marry you, akwaphelela apho, and then he said, I'm going to be a pastor. And I quickly said yes. And I can be honest with you that I did not know what I meant by that. I did not know at all.
Yeah.
But I can safely say it has been the best decision, because God honored that decision that I made. Because for onomthandazo ngelo xesha, coming into ministry, I took it literal, into 80. It's going to be difficult to quote this. Somebody, you can Google it, into 80, from the statement that says from Ellen G. White, a minister is a man that takes the words from the mouth of God and gives them to the people, right? These are shepherds after God's heart that they should lead or teach the church with understanding, with knowledge and understanding. I think that's Jeremiah, right? So to me, that's huge. Ukuthi I sit next to a person that is standing endaweni kaThixo, because God is supposed to be standing here okanye athumele ingelosi to preach the message. So they have a high calling. So therefore, standing next to him, I need to know that, I need to know my story. That God has, I am partnering with ministry eluxanduva olukhulu kakhulu. So hence again, I'm saying that propels me to run with energy. Not that I'm the best, but I strive to do the best. You know, I've observed powerful, I mean, I've taken after women of God, Omem Chamela, Obev, you know, we are led by Umam Uzops, who is so strong, who is pushing us. So I cannot lower the standard. So that keeps me going. Of course, I have a village with is my family, my siblings, our friends. We have cheerleaders that are supporting us. Of course, it's not easy, right? We cannot sit here and think that it's easy in ministry. It's not. But what drives me is that somewhere God taught me to look beyond challenges that are there in ministry and embrace the blessings that are there, that comes with the challenges, the ministry. So that keeps me going.
I wanted to ask you, ma'am, something. Okay. Yeah. I wanted to ask you something, ma'am, and I have to try. By nature, look, I tend to be long-winded. Somebody has just sent me a message that says, "Ubuza kakhe kazinde," you know, so, which is true. One of the reasons for that is that njengoba ndithetha nje ndiyaziphendula. So you get to suffer for that. I'm sorry. But ukuba ngunkosikazi kaMfundisi Papu, and I'm asking you this as umuntu who oye wasebenza at least enkonzweni later, because you were raising those two precious boys. Personally, would you think, has it been a challenge being a wife of lo mfundisi uhlonitshiweyo who's been effective and impactful? Has it opened doors for you, or has it maybe abantu afilishini ukubana abafuna ukumamela umyeni wakho, and I'm saying that because, as I've said, join out church ministry much more later after the boys zikhulile njalo, and you quickly came out of the shell, and abantu abakujongileyo from a distance babona lo muntu uthuleyo njalo, but I mean, there's a very strong woman that takes charge yet respectfully, and the question is around, now that uvele late in ministry and having up next to you lo muntu strong, with a stronger personality as well, what has that meant for you and your ministry and people's reception? Yeah,
it has meant a lot, but I think if I can give a background to what you are saying, Uguti, Nomtandazo has been, if I can use the language, quick background, so to speak. 1986, coming Mchadweni, of course, he was at Yugi. I was looking forward to going to Yugi, having been led by a supervisor, Umfundiswam, the late Pastor Pekana, and there were beautiful stories there. But Yati Indo, no, he's going to office, right? I'm coming there and I'm still studying, right? And we were quiet, if I can use that language, as pastors' wives. I mean, I'm coming from being mentored by Omem Ngebisa, Omem Fesi, Omem Fosi, Omem Matlengana, Omem Changase, Omem Bita. I'm mentioning these people. If I can ask all of you here, when did you see Omem Matlengana pulpiting? Did you see? No. Not during our time. Not during our time. We participated in silence. Probably I could say the introduction of a women's ministry when Umem Yaze came as the first women's ministries director. And of course, with my interaction with Enid Harris, because Mrs. Harris coming from USA was also working closer nabo no mem Naziga, the late Umem Yaze. That's where we kind of came out, from our cocoon, because I even remember when people heard me for the first time, they tell about, so we are coming from that background where Umem was just somebody who accompanies the pastor. Of course, if you have a gift of something, you do it behind the scenes, not necessary that you stand a pulpit in and preach, So we are coming from that background. It's not necessarily that there was nothing that I could contribute, no, not necessarily. Yes, of course, yeah. But of course, that coming out has really helped me, so to speak, because I know that I am a shy person and andifuna, but somehow because I am married to somebody who can talk, who is also vocal, who speaks. Yes, yeah. So it has been a wonderful journey. So a powerful one, yeah.
Okay. Mine would be, Nick mic. Are you taking from them?
Yes, I just wanted maybe one or two.
Okay. Okay. Because I was we'll let that because it's a concluding question I want to ask me. So maybe let's take
Okay.
maybe one or two, one.
Ukhona umuntu yes akujaji funa angazi nokutsho asifuni la mibuzo ithi wapropose njani mfundisi
Thank you very much, Pastor. My question is very short. There was reference to the interplay between administration and being a preacher. What I want to check, and this question may be a bit controversial, kodwa ke mfundisi uziqhelile into ezinjalo, uzuqine. Does presidency detract from your spirituality, or does it augment it? Remember, as a president, you are an administrator, and there are decisions that you've got to take. These decisions as nayo idro. It's either a favor law or kanye lower. You know I'm talking from experience. Ayikho draw with decision making. Invariably, lo on a decision emchanayo akubi mnandi kuye. Manje uyeke lo mbuzo kule ndawo siphilise mfundisi. Khawusomeleza.
Are we going to have 2 or 3 questions before the response, or one more? Okay. That was so me.
Thank you, Fundis. My question, Fundis, I understand that in your family, if I'm correct, you are the first to become a pastor. And we know for a fact that in the past, befundisi, there were a lot of things that which were spoken about in terms of indlela bebephatheke ngayo enkonzweni, to an extent that abantwana abanye baphele bephuma mhlambe enkonzweni okanye abantwana baphele beqonda into yobana, you know what, utata ngaske wayengazange ayithathe, this ministry. In your own experience, would you encourage if one of your sons were to want to be a pastor?
It looks like there are 2 more questions. Can we then say these are the last 2 questions before the umfundisi respond?
Enkosi Mhlekazi. Quick questions to the Papu family. We live in the day and age where people respond to the calling of being a pastor. Somehow in the ministry, for various reasons, they decide to jump the ship and become other things, or Zulucha, whatsoever. And when they do that, sometimes they become very aggressive to the church, very bitter. A new Pastor Jones, I love that. Has it come to you, Mfundisi, that, and ma'am, that I jumped the ship? I know, Mfundisi, there are many places, if you can go and work outside the ministry, that you would work and feed and make more money. And we are going to gather a city sometimes. Has it come that I just leave this and start a new life and leave this ministry and make more money? Has it ever crossed that? If yes, why didn't you not pursue that voice, whether it's small or loud?
I think the question yami isondele kulena ize noqamata. Bendizawungena apha namfundisi. I wanted to ask mfundisi, ungabacebisa kanjani the young pastors that are in the ministry, that are wounded by ingonzo, not to jump the boat?
I could ask the same question, Ruti. How would you advise the members that are wounded by the pastor not to leave the church? Because we shouldn't take this thing to be one-sided. There's wounding. At times, the pastor may be wounded, and the pastor may also cause wounds. But Christ, who wounded Christ? It's our perception of ministry. Ministry is not a place where you're going to be praised and given accolades. I think that's where we start. Sometimes we are wounded because of our own mistakes. Sometimes we are wounded because of the mistakes of the people who are leading. But it doesn't matter, it's wounding in any case. But when you look at Christ, who could have just stayed in heaven and be fine, but was willing to be wounded. Before you throw that pity party for yourself, when you yourself actually through the wound, you are being brought closer to God. Because we have realized in the wounding that in most cases, if not all, we're even brought closer to God. The wounding is never at a point where you can call it a sacrifice. It is not. Sometimes you can say, you know what, I've learned a lesson. Next time I'll be careful how I put this. Or there are people who are really having their own challenges in the church, who really come with their own burdens. But how do I respond to that? If you are carrying your heart on it's like in a pant, is easily wounded, then ministry is going to be a very difficult journey for you. I think there's nothing that gives comfort is to know that God is the one who has called me. And I get my, you know what they say about Christ? When they would call him a demon possessed, he was supposed to be wounded. Ellen Joyce says, in Desire of Ages, commenting on Come unto me and I'll give you rest. He says he was not elated by applause, not dejected by censure. So applause can wound you. Applause can wound you. But you'll be smiling, but you're wounded. Censure can make you feel bad. So when Christ was called a demon-possessed person, that should have wounded him. When everybody called him demon-possessed, it did not. Because Christ knew who he was, and his identity, who he was, rested in God, not on the people that he's leading. So we have to always keep our eyes on God, not on the people. People forget, people will say this today, tomorrow they say that you can't be fueled by people you are leading. You've got to get your fuel from the right station. That will always be, but you can't get your food from the sheep that you are leading. He said, look after my sheep. That was the sermon for today. Feed my sheep. You can't eat from the sheep. You can't say, now it's your turn to feed me. So the question is, where should pastors get their feed? Where should they be fed? Where should they get their meal? Not from the sheep, but from God who called them. We're not called by the sheep, we're called by God. Go to God. That's what Moses, that's what many leaders will do. Go and cry before God. And say, this is what the sheep are doing, and you'll see how God is going to take you out of that. It is true, there's serious wounding that takes place. And anyone who's in ministry, we know we've had those, we have sustained those wounds. If you have not sustained those wounds, that it is because you are actually causing wounds to others. On that question that Babu Benenge asked, the truth is that leaders, administrators should be the closest to God than the people they're leading. That's the challenge. I always say to husbands, as husbands in the family, we should be the most spiritual because God expects a lot from you. The challenge with administration in the church is that even when you make a mistake, when you blunder and not know the procedure, the parliamentary procedure, let no one say our president is not a Christian. They must just say our president does not know parliamentary procedure. There's a difference. Sometimes we master parliamentary procedure, and in the process we become unchristian. One of the greatest pain for a member is to look at the leader and say, my leader is not a Christian because he lies through his teeth and he knows he's lying. We make mistakes, but members are comfortable with a leader who is able to admit that here I've made a mistake. But once you say, no, if I admit, then I'll lose points, I might not be re-elected or whatever, then you're a politician. You're working for votes. And we are all tempted to work on that. It's easier to get votes. And I'm not talking about myself. I'm not talking about leadership. I'm talking about administration. We need to be the closest to God. And I must say this. I was watching a presentation. This person says, when you are peaceful, you can actually inject that peace to all those that are around you. And he demonstrated it. He says, a horse, a wild horse, can be calmed by your peacefulness. I said, yo. A wild dog, you can actually transmit it. A wild dog, because you are peaceful, it can just sit down and be peaceful because of your own peacefulness. And then he moves on. He says, in a classroom, and there was a study made, the reason why we have got learners who are this and jumping up and down, it is because the teacher himself is not resting. When you are peaceful in the class becomes peaceful. The peace in you creates peace outside. And so our elders would say that, our leaders would say that you're leading the meeting, things don't go your way. It is when things don't go your way that the members in the committee will watch and listen. The voice, the tone, it should be the same as when they agree with you and the same as when they disagree with you. Let not the members feel that we've offended the chairman. We have offended him. You see, even the voice now is different. We have offended him. We've got to operate. And when I'm not saying this is what I do. This is what we should be doing. We should be aiming for that. And we know when we are not doing that, what happens. But the meeting becomes peaceful because the one chairing the meeting, I'm coming to administration, is in contact and is not competing for attention. Where everybody feels respected, where everybody feels I can make contribution. We make a lot of progress when we allow God to be the real chairperson, the real leader. And we make mistakes when we want to play to the gallery. Would I recommend my child to be a pastor? And the answer is yes. But you should ask them, would they want to be a pastor? But if I had a way, I would. You know why I would do? I wanted to be a medical doctor. But I look back now and I say, thank God, I don't think I would have been saved. I'm not saying to be a medical doctor is wrong. I'm saying me, being a medical doctor, I would never. You see, being a pastor is not divorced from me from my salvation. It is not. It's not like there are 100 ways God could have saved me, and being a pastor is one of those. For me, God could only speak to me by assigning me and by engaging me in pastoral ministry. It was for my own salvation. I look back and I say, thank God. So there is no feeling that I've done so much. There's a feeling that God, you've taken a risk by assigning me this. We were 24, man. We were 23 when we started ministry. And you stood up and you were given a church. What do you know? I mean, honestly, what do you know? I remember talking to a father. He says to me, Fundisi, awunazi sermon ezinonceda kube shushu phaa ekhaya. I mean, I'm not married. How am I going to know those sermons? Sermons that would make sure that there's fire at home. And then you realize that, and God gives you that assignment. Talk to them so that when they go home, there's fire at home. And when you have a home with no wife, I mean, you don't need any fire. So God gambled by giving us this work. But God is, but not only, do you know there are members here who are sent by God? Of course, there are others sent by that. But there are members who are sent by God. They will stand at the door and say, Pastor, thank you. And then that was wonderful. You look back and says, but what was wonderful? I mean, when you look back to the sermons you were preaching, there are members who are just there to encourage you. Not that they were really, really, really blessed, but they saw that you were really speaking from your heart. I mean, these members have been listening to powerful pastors for years before you were born. You think you're going to impress them now? No, they just sit there and they look at you and they encourage you. And then you say, you know what? I'm going to come back again next week because God has placed people in his church to encourage you. Here's the thing. God will never give you an assignment without also giving you support to carry that assignment. So he says to Abraham, go and sacrifice your son. And then he says to Isaac, make it easy for the old man. Because imagine if Isaac started crying, the old man would have collapsed. But the young man says, Daddy, let it pay, man. He made it easy. When God gives you a huge assignment, he's going to make sure that you carry it. His bidding are his enablings. He never gives you a task without making sure that he'll be there to help you carry it. Umbuzo buthini umbuzo Oh, yes, yes. Okay. Yeah, we don't need to get to that. I've even made plans and tried to convince my wife, this is how we can do it. This is still serving God. I'll have the opportunity to serve God. And I'm not saying, beloved, those who have left are wrong or whatever. They shouldn't have done that. I'm just saying we are faced with that. But I'm not sure about my wife because she's always been the one who says, no, you're going to leave me confused because I married a pastor. Now, when you are changing midway, what's happening? What's happening? You came to me and says, marry me, you're going to be a pastor. So what is this thing now? What else am I going to trust coming from you? Now you're changing being a pastor. What else are you going to change? So that really made it a little bit difficult to pursue that. But there've been moments when you say, you know what? This is not the only one. Like I said, do you know, beloved, can I say this as I stop? The problem with today, unlike yesterday, is that what you say, your children read it. So I've got to manage my children and give them a context. It's not because they hate me. It's not because they hate me. This is just another way of looking at what needs to be done. And sometimes because they are so passionate about that, they may even get to a point of thinking that I'm the stumbling block. You've got to manage that. And that's where the part can be. So if you are failing to manage it, personally, between me and my wife, and I've said to pastors, our wives are more sensitive to our heads than us. They get more hurt than us. Really, they get more hurt than us. But they get courage when they see what was hurtful, that you are actually not caving into that. Then they get courage. But when you just come and say, Goskes, yes, nobody else, then you're really killing your wife. But you can cry. There's nothing wrong with crying, but with direction. And the wife can be there to say, it's going to be okay. It's going to be okay. But we've had a lot of moments when that voice is the voice that sustains you, that carries you, because he knows your commitment. We are just expressing a challenge you are facing at that moment. uThixo usinike i-assignment ezahlukeneyo, abanye bethu ngezamatye, abanye bethu ngezenkuthazo, zonke zizawusinceda sifike apho funa sifike khona.
Probably Panda, ivesi endla ngombetha ngayo is what he taught me when he started running comrades, that you start strong and you finish strong.
Yes, ma'am.
So those have been my words, that when you start Epitamarisbeck, nizala home, you know, that has stuck with me all the way. When you get to Durban, you don't get to Durban collapsing. When you get to that finishing line, you are still strong. You know, it's true. It has not been easy. It's not easy because you work with people. You know, singabantu, singaboni, we are sinners. It's not easy. But what matters most is that you have God, you have people that are supporting you.
Yes.
You have people that are praying all this. So you cannot dare give up because we have a cloud of witness that is cheering you up all the way.
Let me say that as well. With the Facebook and WhatsApp and stuff like that, it's a blessing also, because people can actually tell you that I'm praying for you. In the past, you would never know who's praying for you. You get a message, Mfundis, we just finished praying and we prayed for you.
Yeah.
People are praying for us.
Yeah.
I mean, which position, which responsibility, which work, which profession, where you would have people saying we are praying for you. There's no way we're not going to be saved, beloved. I promise you.
Yeah.
With so many people praying for you, we will make it. Because when they pray for you, it's not just for that little thing. It's for your life as well, your whole life.
Yeah.
These children, these kids are baptized with prayer. There are people who are praying for us. You can't play with those prayers.
No.
You don't need the whole lot to pray for you. Two
No.
make a big
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah.
But there are more than two. There are people who are praying for us.
Yeah.
And we appreciate them. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for those questions. Okay. It took longer, but that's the beautiful thing about conversations. And I'm saying this to also those that are watching virtually. We're not going to be having the last message, the response message from Dr. Papu and Mama Papu, but we will continue that at the gala dinner. I know those that are watching will not be part of the gala dinner, but it's okay because we will record it and we will share it later. Enkosi kakhulu bethu nani Nkosi mayinisikelele sawuvala ngoku. Akho enye into enzayivulela. Sawucela umhlobo wami umdala okay. Nikwena chao. Okay, Pamba aze utata uMbenenga asifanele ngomthandazo. Tata wami lo. Besa but bendifuna just ndimbeke spotini umhlobo wami lo. Okay, njengoba zakunika late. Kunendifuna ukucela yona late zakunika late. Ngicela usabudala unyiki, ngicela usabaka phambili. Ngexesha uchawe zawuthetha lapha ndithethe.
Hayi mfundisi bendizawuthi kulaa mbuzo kaSibali. uSibali mos umntata uMbenenge uzeke ematshaweni. Nalo mfana naye uzeke ematshaweni. Kulaa mbuzo kaSibali othi ispirituality se-administrator eyi-president asonakali na kulaa junction yokugweba njenge-administrator. Xa bendiphulaphula i-response kamfundisi Sibali, ndimve ngokungathi uthi kufuneka ube ngumKristu in such a way that lo oye wakwi-receiving end yesigwebo kube lula later on ukubuyela kuwe azothi man president khawundincede ndibuyele ndingaphakama njani kwakhona. And I think that also goes to other leaders or church elders with decisions ezibuhlungu zokudisfellowshipwa kwabantu. That xa sithe sazibona sikwi-position yokudisfellowshipa abantu, that we must be first so Christian that laa mntu uwileyo uye wadisfellowship abone kulula ukubuyela kumdala and saying, Dala, khawundincede, how do I get integrated back? Ngoba ubone inguwe umKristu strong, lo ebepronouncer isigwebo. Wabona inguwe umuntu ofanelekileyo into kokuba angafumana i-second chance.
I think Marcelo, after that, I should not be saying anything. Tata uMbenenge, tata wam, tata wethu, cela usivalele ngomthandazo. Ungathandaza nalapho khona tata wam. Ungathandaza ungamana lapho tata.
Okay, masivaleni ngamehlo bethu. Wena owasithandayo wasikhulula ezonweni zethu ngelelakho igazi wasenza okumkana babingeleli kuye uThixo babo. Kuwe ke makube kuzuko imbeko igunya namandla kusukela ngoku kude kuye kwimini engunaphakade. Wonke umsebenzi owenziweyo Nkosi apha siyabulela. I-presence yakho siyivile sayibona. Sibuthike ngoku xa sigoduka senzeke singalahlekani nalo message besifumene apha. Kodwa siphilele uzuko lwegama lakho. Ngoku ke yamkelani intsikelelo yenkosini godukeni elisexolweni. Makanisikelele uYehova nigcine. uYehova makabuphakamisele kuno ubuso bakhe azani babale. uYehova makabukhanyisele kuno ubuso bakhe aninike uxolo. Luthe nobabalo lwenkosi yethu Yesu Kristu, thando lukaThixo, udlelane nomoya oyingcwele
lube nani nonke
Oh,
usukela kaloku nje ude kuye nakwimini engunaphakade. Amen.
oh, President. Oh, my.